What's poppin', everybody? Cerebral24. So I'm right here at the Charizard Lounge on the Rayquaza GX article, Rayquaza GX going to the World Championship, and we're going to look at an in-depth look on this card and the decks, and see if Rayquaza GX can really do it. Rayquaza GX is definitely probably the biggest attacker and sort of biggest card from Celestial Storm. Rayquaza cards in general have always been top tier cards that usually win in top tournaments. They end up becoming top cards, and this one has the same potential. The main thing it has, Dragon Break, it's an attack. It does 30 damage 30 times all of the grass and lightning energies on Rayquaza. So basically, if you have 3 to do the basic attack, just meet the requirements of the attack, you do 90 for 3. But if you have more down, and this applies to all Pokemon, it doesn't have to be Rayquaza. So if you have, let's say, another Rayquaza GX down with 3 lightning grass energies on, you're at 180 all of a sudden. And with a choice band, you're already doing 210. You knock out most of the relevant GX Pokemon, stage GX Pokemon. So this is why this card has potential. The other stuff about it is also kind of good. Stormy Winds is another thing that really helps this Pokemon do what it wants to do. You play this Pokemon down, and when you play it on the bench, you can discard the top 3 cards of your deck. So that's a major cost to pay. But if you do this, you can grab an energy from the discard pile and attach it. And it doesn't have to be from the 3 cards you discarded. This is just the cost that you do to meet the requirement. You can grab an energy that you discarded, or you can just have the energy over there and you grab it. You have it in the discard pile from before. And this is what you're normally going to do. You're probably going to be putting some energies there in the discard pile, maybe with Ultra Ball and shit, and then you grab it with its ability. Now the cost is pretty high though to discard 3 cards from the top of your deck. We're going to look at this a little bit later though. But it basically is one of the ways that it gives you a free energy. So you already have 1 energy on him, so you only need to attach 2. And he's ready to go. And Tempest GX, basically this is like a extreme Juniper attack. You discard all of your hand and then you draw 10. You shouldn't really do this if you ask me, but I guess if you're running the Rayquaza GX deck, you probably aren't going to have another Pokemon with another GX attack. But yeah, if you do this in the end, it sucks. I know from experience of how many times I end my opponent's Rampage GXs when they use Big Whale. But, you know, it's not bad, I guess. Discard all the shit, draw 10, whatever. The only really bad thing about him, basically, it's the stats with 180 HP. It's kind of standard for, I guess, basic GX Pokemon, like the basic EX Pokemon from back in the X and Y and Black and White days. But I wish it was a little better. It should have been 190, especially with a terrible 3 retreat. But this is basically the Pokemon, and they speculate around here some of the decks that you can run. One thing that I need to mention is this card is definitely very good and expanded with all the cards they have there, with things like Battle Compressor, the Shamans, and all the other cards that help make the deck turbo, and all the other methods and shit. In Standard, it's yet to be seen. We're gonna have to wait, and we're gonna have to find out. We're gonna see at Worlds what happens, but it does have potential. Now, after Dragon Majesty comes out, when that set comes out, it becomes even better because there's a lot of Dragon support that it can utilize. Right now, before Dragon Majesty though, he doesn't have a lot to work with, and that's the thing. Are you going to see that the deck lists are kind of straightforward? He doesn't really have a lot of support and partners to work with, which is why it's a little iffy if you can do it, win Worlds. So the standard partners, standard cards you're going to use, they list them here too. It's Max Elixir. Max Elixir seems to be the obvious ones. It's one of their best ways to accelerate energies in the form of just an item and do things speedy, because that's one of the things you're going to have to utilize on this dude. Since it's a basic Pokemon, you don't have to evolve. It's not like he's a stage 1 GX. Getting the advantage of speed for Max Elixir, playing down the energies, making him ready, and start attacking, doing big chunks of damage before your opponent gets ready. That's one of the main things that it has going for it. So Max Elixir is basically one of the only, and I guess, best ways to accelerate energies on this Pokemon. You have to run this card for sure. You have to run a good basic energy Skeleton to hit the energies with Max Elixir. You don't want to miss any of them. And get the energies on him, basically. Next we got Latias Prism Star. This is going to be from not Roaring Skies, Celestial Storm. This is probably his best partner that he can use before Dragon Majesty. This Pokemon basically is like the basic Evoltal and Doris, all the other Pokemon that do the whole attack and grab energy from the discard pile. But the great thing about this Latias card is that it grabs an energy that you can attach to all of your Dragon Pokemon. So if you have a couple of Rayquaza GXs, you can grab an energy and attach it to them for each one if you have a lot of energies in the discard pile. So this is definitely the Pokemon you want to open, definitely the Pokemon you want to use early. If you open with Latias Prism, manage to get a bunch of Rayquaza GXs down, and you make sure you put a lot of energies in the discard pile, you get the effect from Rayquaza GX, let's say, and then you manage to use Latias Prism at least one time. It doesn't even have to be 2 times, but especially if you get the attack off 2 times, man, you're going to have a lot of energy in play. All of your guys are going to be ready, and I don't see any way your opponent can win. No matter what they do, it's very, very difficult for them to win. When you have, let's say, 3 to 4 Rayquaza GXs that are ready with 3 energies on each, you're doing basically fucking insane damage, knocking on everything. It doesn't matter if they pull one, if they kill one, if they do whatever they do. You're basically going to be getting knockouts back to back. So Latias Prism, definitely a great partner. This is definitely in the deck. Unfortunately, it's only going to be at 1 since it's a Prism card. The HP isn't the greatest either for a Prism card. I wish it had like 150 HP at least, if it's not going to have 160 HP. The retreat is good though. Choice Band is self-explanatory. You do need it. Helps with your knockouts. Ideally, you want to have 6 energies in play, 6 grass lightning energies in play, and a Choice Band to get the knockouts, you're at 210. So that's what you do. They make a good point here. Fear Belt seems like a cool thing to put because it makes Rayquaza GX sturdier, and that's important. But it really doesn't help with the damage. Just doing 10 extra, it doesn't really help you with the knockouts. So Choice Band is the better way to go. Unfortunately, he needs it. I'm not really going to mention anything about Pheromosa GX. You can check the articles if you're interested. But these are basically like the standard stuff, I guess. Latias is pretty standard. You're going to have to run a few Choice Bands and Max Elixir. And Dvart Field, this gives you some extra damage too. Help you with the knockouts. I guess if you're gonna run a stadium, just run this. You help the fucking Zoroark GX since it's dark too, and that can be annoying. But I mean, at the same time, you know, they probably run their parallel cities in their deck, so yeah. Xurkitree GX, they're talking about some of the add-on options text. Yeah, this is a nice little Pokemon too, since you're utilizing lightning energies, using the lightning GX attack early to put in a card in your opponent's prizes, fuck with their hand too, and maybe you can stall a little bit with flashing head. So yeah, it's a nice little option, whether you run the B-string deck or not. And then yeah, B-string, there's going to be a few variants here. The B-string Ultra Beast 1 is one of them. It's probably the worst version, but it does have a few things going for it, I guess. Energy switch. Maybe you want to run this, maybe you don't. I'm not 100% on it. Yeah, moving the energy is great, but I don't know, man. I guess we're gonna have to see the deck list so you guys get what I mean. Pal Pad is important, definitely, because man, you're gonna get fucked on your own with your ability. But yeah, we need to get to the decks so you guys realize. Mysterious Treasure is self-explanatory since you run dragons, and I think Acrobike, since that card gets reprinted in Celestial Storm, that could be something. Make it more turbo. Super Rod is also important. It's the same as Pal Pad. Anyway, so let's get down to the decks. So they basically give you 3 different deck versions here, and they're all kind of valid, but I'm a little iffy. Okay, so the first one, straight turbo Rayquaza, that's how they call it, and it's basically that, a straight turbo Rayquaza. And you look at the skeleton, you look at the cards, it's pretty simple. You got your Rayquaza GXs, you got Latias, you got a bunch of the other attackers and stuff they mentioned, like for Amasa, Shining Genesect. Anyways, but the important thing is that the skeleton you guys are seeing is just full max elixirs, 4 of those. You have Palpat, Stretcher, a Super Rod, just for some recovery because your Rayquaza GX's ability to mill cards from the deck, it's going to be pretty painful. It's going to screw you over. And as you guys can see, there's no real any other way to accelerate energies. You just manually attach them. You use Rayquaza GX's ability. You hopefully manage to use Latias, and hope you get lucky with Max Elixir. So this is why it's called Straight Turbo, and it's simple. It's turbo, but it relies a lot on luck. You can control your luck a little bit, but at the same time, you might get fucked too with luck. I don't see him running any, let's see, mysterious treasures. I think he should run a couple of those, but I guess he doesn't in this case. But yeah, running things like Ultra Ball and mysterious treasures, your discard outlets basically is important. You want to get a lot of the energies over there so you can use all of your Rayquaza GXs and get basically a free energy on all of them. So you can get as many free energies as you can, basically. Because like I've said, you only have a couple of methods. So let's say you don't even utilize Rayquaza GX's ability to get free energies. Then you're really going to have a hard time getting the free energies if you miss, let's say, the max elixirs. And that's another thing. With the max elixirs, you have to hit the energies. So between discarding cards with Rayquaza from the deck, between putting the energies in the discard pile yourself there, it becomes really difficult, and really you have to rely on luck to hit the energies of max elixir. So obviously, like I've said in my explanation with Latias, if you manage to get the energies and if your max elixirs they work, Rayquaza GX's ability, you get the energy on it, you use Latias a couple of times, and you get the energies in play, it becomes very difficult for this deck to lose, in my opinion, because you can just knock out anything. That's it. So that's basically straight turbo Rayquaza, this version. You're going to have to rely a lot on luck, if you ask me, and you go turbo. You basically go all out or not. What's that phrase called? You go in or you don't go. I don't remember what that phrase is called, but anyway, you go broke or go home, something like that. Anyway, I think there's a couple of phrases like that, but yeah. So that's the first version. Next, we got the Beastly Turbo Rayquaza, and basically this is the one that runs Ultra Beasts, and you run the Beast Ring. So the Beast Ring is one of the ways you can instantly grab, if you're at 4 or 3 prizes, if your opponent is at 4 or 3 prizes, you can instantly grab energies from the deck and attach them to the Ultra Beasts, and that can give you some pretty significant energy acceleration. Even if you just use one of these, you play one of these, if you just manage to get 2 energies like that, it can really help you out getting the damage output you need for a Rayquaza GX. So that's the plus. You can't really ignore this plus. The problem is that Beast Ring, as people have experienced with other decks in Buzzwole and Malamar, it's an inconsistent card, and if your opponent is clever, they can find ways to play around it. Especially decks like Zoroark GX, where they have so much control with their trade-in and with all their disruption and the damage they can do. They have so much control, that deck. So if you consider that that's probably going to be the #1 deck for Worlds, it's possibly the favorite to win, and I think they're probably going to take it like they took the North American championships. And you think about that, you really don't want to go there and rely on Beast Ring against decks like those. It's very difficult. Maybe people can figure out a way to make it work. If it does work, obviously it's quite powerful because you have a lot more reliable means other than just the straight turbo Rayquaza. And you can actually utilize some of the Ultra Beasts too. I mean, The deck list here only lists for Amasa GX and Xurkitree GX, but you can actually use other Ultra Beasts too, like the regular Xurkitree and other Pokemon. The regular for Amasa, for example, that can be pretty good, doing 182 when you only have one prize left. So it's good shit. It does have some, I guess, flexibility when it comes to attackers and Pokemon and what have you, but I don't know, man. It's definitely the most inconsistent of the ones, and your opponent can play around it. And then the last one, the dude that wrote this article thinks this is probably the best version, and I think I have to agree with him too, is the Rayquaza Garbodor version. So Rayquaza doesn't really rely much this deck on abilities. You're going to use your ability, of course, but once you do, it's not like you're going to play Scoop Ups and you're not going to try to reuse Rayquaza GX's ability over and over and use any other abilities. So once you do your fast shit like that with your basic Pokemon, you bring out the Garbodor and at least you know you fuck up your opponent's abilities. And that can be pretty something, not letting your opponent use Trade-In, Zoroark GX. Hopefully you fuck up some Malamars too. So that can be pretty good. What you aim to do is you play your Rayquaza GXs at least from, let's say, turn 1 and turn 2. You get their energy, you get the free energy with his ability, and then by your third turn, and maybe even second turn, you want to have your Garbodor with the tool down. So you have a lock already with the Garbotoxin, and your Rayquaza GX has gotten a few energies. So basically, what this deck does is basically you slow down your opponent, and you build the energies maybe a little bit slowly. Of course, you're still going to use max elixirs and shit. And you do it sort of that way. You have more control. It's more of a control surprise turbo kind of Rayquaza build, this one. And I feel it's the most effective one if it's going to do well. And if it's going to win, it might probably be this one. Now, who knows? Maybe the straight turbo one is the best. Maybe even the beastly turbo one is good. It depends on people figuring out how to use the decks, the player actually piloting the deck. Obviously, the lists aren't going to be exactly like these ones. These are actually blueprint sort of lists. You're going to have to make some changes, perhaps. But this is a nice little version. At least you have Garbotoxin to rely on and shit. So these are basically the decks, and then they talk about a few other things here that I'm not really going to go into. You should check out the article. Let's see. Where is the shit he talks about? Yeah. The other version that they talk about, maybe that's an option too, is Magnezone. That's probably something that I would use because I love this sort of stage 2 energy acceleration decks. But if you're going to go with the Magnezone route, you might as well just use Magnezone and just use Duskmane Necrozma, or just use the Ultra Necrozma GX. Do something like that. Obviously, Rayquaza GX is going to play a little different because you don't lose the energies and stuff, but if you're going to go with that route, it's just too similar to those decks. So I feel like, I mean, if those decks didn't do well and they didn't really succeed in the North American Championship, I don't really see them going to Worlds because they're sort of good decks, linear decks, but smart players can get around them. And I mean, with the Garbodors, with Zoroark, they have a hard time. So yeah, it's probably not the most consistent and the best version to run. And if you're going to go with this route, you might as well just go with Malamar, because the Malamar route, getting a bunch of those stage 1s and getting energies from the discard pile is better than trying to get a stage 2 out and playing the energies from the hand. Both decks have their advantages and disadvantages, like I've mentioned in other of my videos, because I run those sorts of decks all the time. But you might as well just fucking run those decks instead of running Magnus and Rayquaza GX. So the verdict, can Rayquaza GX do it? He has a chance, like I've said. It really is just hard to put my finger on it because he has potential and you just never know what can happen. Worlds have always been unpredictable and you never know, man. Maybe somebody's going to use Rayquaza GX and use Electro GX, put the energies on a bunch of other Pokemon, not Rayquaza GX, then power up Rayquaza GX, and then they attack and do all sorts of shit. you never know what can happen. I think the sort of deck that probably has the best chance because it's just too good, it's going to be Zoroark GX. With the right list and player, for me, Malamar is unstoppable, but Rayquaza GX is also a candidate. Buzzhole GX, I'm not really feeling that deck a lot, to be honest. I really feel like the only thing that deck has going for it is the early damage, and not really, since Zoroark can do that too. And the fact that it has a type advantage against Zoroark GX. But Zoroark GX kind of has control of the matchup if that Pokemon can't get one-hit knockouts instantly with a bunch of energies. So I really feel like probably the best candidates are going to be Zoroark GX, of course. So many different variants. Cargo is coming too. Malamar, of course. I'm behind that deck, even if people say it's probably not going to win. It's probably not good, they say. And Rayquaza GX, maybe he'll get lucky. Who knows? Maybe people figure out better ways to make it work, because technically these cards haven't come out yet. I imagine people here on Charizard Lounge, the dude that wrote this article, perhaps they play tested it with proxies and shit. They did their research, all that jazz. But maybe there's other cards that are gonna come from Celestial Storm, and people figure out other ways to make it work. Maybe. So that's basically it. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys subscribe, leave a like, share this with your friends. Say Bro94. What's up?